Hello, hello, friends. Welcome back to the Money Bear Podcast. This is your host, Chloe Daniels, better known as Clover Money Coach. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little congested. I cannot catch a break when it comes to my health lately. I think you guys heard in the last episode where I was talking about having an awful staph infection. And through having a staph infection and being on antibiotics, I think my immune system is just down. And so I got a cold. Fun stuff, right? Luckily, I mean, I can handle a cold, but it's just been like, I feel like it's been one thing after another. And I'm just like, oh my God, I miss being healthy. So I'm really tired. I'm trying to just sleep a lot because I remember when I was dealing with long COVID last year, I for months felt sick, and I don't want a repeat of that. And I think the reason that I continue to feel sick is because I wasn't slowing down enough to just take care of myself. And so I slept for 10 hours last night. I'm going to do it again for the next several nights until I feel better. Take that NyQuil, and hopefully by Monday, or I mean, hopefully sooner than Monday, hopefully I feel better soon. So I'm tempted to try one of these IV places because I know a lot of people will do an IV and will feel better almost immediately after. So I'm really tempted to try that. I think they're $100 or something. I'm gonna have to look up IV places here in San Diego. I've never done that before. Well, that's not true because in China, an IV was the go-to. That's what you did when you got sick. You would just go straight to a place to get an IV and boom, you were better immediately afterwards. It was amazing. So maybe that's what I'll do because I'm really tired of being sick. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll call this place that I know of. So anyway, that's kind of I guess my life update. Not very exciting because yeah, I will say even through being sick constantly, I am a lot happier. I was just thinking about this week of how moving to a place that is aligned with what you want in the life that you want and the activities you enjoy doing and things like that, it really does make all the difference in the world. I do not remember the last time I was this happy, even with dealing with, illness after illness and injuries and stuff like that. I'm still really happy. And I was thinking about that last night. I got to go on a boat with my friend Deanna and all of her friends, and she has a ton of girlfriends, and I'm lucky to be one of them. And I got to meet all her girlfriends who she's known since she was 3 years old. And on the boat, it was just I feel so good having a community here. And I feel like I didn't have that in the same way that I wanted it in Chicago because a lot of my friends had moved or they weren't friends with each other or we had just grown apart or, reached different stages of our life. And I feel like here my friends are much more on the same page with me and much more doing a lot of the same things that I enjoy doing. And it's really wonderful. And I feel like I have so many different communities here. I have the community with Dee, I have a community with my jujitsu friends, I have the Clover community, and it just feels really good. I feel really fulfilled and really happy, and even without a partner. And I feel like when I lived in Chicago, I didn't have community as much as I would have liked. And granted, the last 2 years was a pandemic, so it's understandable that I didn't feel like I had as much as a community, but I just never had these people that I really connect with. And there was certainly groups and periods of time where I had friends that I was much closer to. I remember when I first moved to Chicago, I had roommates, three girl roommates. And that was some of my happiest memories is living with those three women who became close friends of mine. And as life continues and people get married and have kids and move and do different things and meet new people and make new friends, you don't have that same closeness as you would have in your early 20s. And it's cool to kind of have that again on this different vibe, different wavelength. So I'm really happy and grateful for all of that. And I'm really grateful to the friends here who have really wrapped me into their community because it feels so special and I feel so grateful. So yeah, things are going well. I think I told you guys I started therapy again. I've only had one session, but I'm really looking forward to my next session. I'm paying out of pocket for it because to find a therapist that specializes in EMDR therapy and the kinds of things that I want to focus on. I couldn't find anybody who was in network, so I'm paying $175 a session. So I'm like, cool, we can meet once a month. Not really. We're meeting like every 2 to 3 weeks, which is fine because with how my schedule is, that actually works out better anyway. But I'm excited to talk to her about some issues that I feel like I have not conquered myself. Like, I feel like I have a lot of anger issues. And I know that sounds funny because I think most people who know me personally or know me in a friend way, like in real life, on the internet, would never guess that I'd struggle with anger. But I think it's because it's all very much internalized and the anger comes out in really small moments. Like, for example, earlier this week, I was running late to jujitsu and I was so mad because I was finally being able to go back to jujitsu after the staph infection. And I was so excited, but I was getting caught up with work. And of course, me being me, I'm like, let me just squeeze in one more thing before I leave. And that meant I had 12 minutes to get to jujitsu, which is a 15-minute drive away. And it takes about 10 minutes to find parking. So I'm like slamming doors and cursing under my breath. And like the only person I'm mad at is me. I'm mad at me. And I'm like a tornado, a bull in a china shop, just running through my house, grabbing everything that I need, slamming doors. And of course, my poor neighbors upstairs, which they're new neighbors, they just moved in and they can hear everything because they're sitting out on their balcony. And I live in an old building, so it's like the walls are pretty thin. And I'm like, God damn it, they just saw me have a total tantrum. And I'm like slamming my door to my car and just like the fuck word, the F word is just like running out of my mouth constantly. Then the next day, there were cookies on my front porch. And I was like, oh, they must have heard me having a really terrible tantrum. The neighbors, they left me like a plate of cookies to say, like, just to say hi and I guess welcome themselves to the building. They're super sweet, at least the one I've met so far. So anyway, that's been my week, but I'm working on some anger stuff. I think that's going to be prioritized in my sessions with my new therapist, who I'm really excited about. So yeah, it's funny that I started this call off by being like, I'm so happy, guys. I'm so grateful. I've got all these wonderful things going. And I'm going back to therapy because I think a lot of us think that we go to therapy when things are bad or when we're not feeling well or when we are not thriving or feeling good about life. But therapy is, first of all, something that I think is helpful at any stage in our life. But sometimes there's also like specific things we need to work on. And for me, that's been highlighted just by these random bouts of anger that I've been noticing. And I don't know if maybe those random bouts of anger have been more prevalent or more recognizable because I'm so happy in my life right now that it's like, oh, that's some anger there, Chloe. Got to deal with that. So anyway, we are going to get to the quick tip this week, which is talking about, can you be happy on more than $75,000 a year? So you guys may have heard in the past, there's a famous study about what income do you need in order to be happy in the United States. And for the longest period of time, it was $75,000 a year is what they said. And I want to look at that and say, like, is that true? Can you really not achieve more happiness by making more money? Because I got to say, personally, making more money has only made my life a lot easier. And I would say it has also allowed me to be a happier person. All right, today's money tip is a little bit different because I want to talk about money and happiness. Now, this was spurred on by an email that we had not that long ago that a lot of folks had a lot of interest in. We got a lot of responses, we got a lot of clicks. And so I was like, let's do a podcast episode on this idea that your happiness plateaus at $75,000 a year. And we're talking about $75,000 of income a year. Now, spoiler alert, that has been debunked, but let's talk about it a little bit. So this idea that your plateau, your happiness plateau begins at $75,000 or it does plateau at $75,000 of income a year was an actual study that was done by Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton at Princeton University in 2010, which should be your first red flag. They found found that our general happiness does plateau once someone is earning around $75,000 annually. Now, obviously, $75,000 in 2010 is not the same as $75,000 today. It's probably close to, over $125,000 in today's dollars, I would say, with inflation. So that's first thing to keep in mind. Now, I have never resonated with this idea that money does not buy you happiness. Of course, it's not as black and white as that, because money cannot buy you happiness. Happiness is not something that can be bought. However, money provides you with options and security and freedom. And I tell you what, achieving happiness with those things is certainly a whole hell of a lot easier than not having any of those things. So research agrees with me is the good thing. And I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but in the capitalist society we live in, it's just true statement. The research does agree with me. And in 2021, the University of Pennsylvania's Matthew Killingsworth did a study that contradicted those findings from 2010. And he found that there is no plateau and happiness continues to grow as income increases, which is not surprising, right? Now, Kahneman and Killingsworth, the ones who originally did the study, were like, you know what? We're going to redo this study to battle the PhDs out there. And so they grouped in a third researcher, Barbara Mellers, to conduct a new study. And this was the study to rule them all, because they found that the participants did report well-being increasing along with their income up to and beyond earning $75,000 a year. The only plateau that they found was around $100,000 a year if the person was already somewhat unhappy to begin with. So money can really only take our well-being and happiness so far, right? Like if we are a generally unhappy person, then money is really only going to amplify that. It might alleviate it a little bit because it gives you that more options and security, and the stress around money may not be there as prevalent as it was before, but it's not a catch-all solution. Like that's obvious, right? But what I've always said, and what I find interesting, and the data supports it, is I've always said that money just amplifies who you are. That's it. It's not going to make you a better person or a worse person. It's just going to amplify the person you already were. So this was actually supported by the study that we can't obviously depend on one single thing for happiness, but the happiest 30% of the population in this study see less of a plateau. They found that their well-being continued to grow faster when they started to earn more than $100,000 a year. So again, amplifying people who are already generally happy, that more money, that more than $100,000 of income a year, it just amplified their ability to be happy, which I feel like that's like, yeah, duh, of course, it makes sense. Now, obviously, it's not as simple as that, but the reason I like to talk about this is because I think a lot of us have this false belief that money is not going to improve our life, that more money is not going to be the solution to our problems, or that the more money is not going to allow us to be a happier person. And I say, we got to battle that idea. Number one, is that idea coming from this study that I've heard this study so many times. I remember the first time hearing about this study back in when I lived in Chicago, and I was still friends with somebody who was a generally unhappy person. And I remember he had started making $75,000 a year. And he's like, I now make what they say, like you need to make in order to achieve the ultimate happiness. And I'm not happy. And I'm like, yeah, probably because you're not a happy person. But I remember hearing that and being like, that's total bullshit. Like the more money you make, the more opportunity you have, the more ability you have to take options and decide on things for yourself. And to me, that makes it a whole hell of a lot easier to be happy than if you're struggling to pay bills and you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're afraid of something happening because one emergency could derail everything about you or everything that you've got going on in your life right now. So I feel like this community is going to be like, well, yeah, duh, of course. But this is why I wanted to bring it up, is because I cannot tell you how many people, and especially women, who are afraid of going after that next job, who are afraid of asking for more money at work, who are afraid of seeming like they're not grateful or whatever. And so they don't ask for the promotion. They don't go apply for that new job. They don't throw their hat in the ring because they think, well, I have enough. This is enough, right? And one, yes, I think it's important to understand what is enough for you. Like that's huge. That is key. In order to be happy, we have to recognize when we have enough. However, that doesn't mean we have to stop ourselves from being able to achieve more, to bringing more abundance into our lives. And so when we're facing that, where we're like, I don't know, I'm happy where I'm at, I'm really comfortable, I just encourage people to question that. Is it because you're scared? Is it because you're afraid of getting outside of your comfort zone? Is it because you really are happy where you're at and you really don't want to move beyond where you're at? And I guess the other question is always, could you be happier? Not just looking at your job, looking at your whole life. Could you be happier? And if your answer is no, I'm perfectly happy the way that I am, I could not be happier, then okay, fine. Don't go after that promotion. Don't try to ask for more money. Don't negotiate. Don't do those things. But I'm going to guess most of us could be happier. There's something that we're like, you know what? To further amplify my happiness, I would like to work less, or I would like to finally take that trip to Italy that I've been dreaming of for 5 years, or I would like to adopt that cat, or I would like to do whatever it is. And whatever it is that we think can amplify our happiness, most of the time, it's tied to money, isn't it? So that's one point. The second point is that I hear so often women telling me that they're not going to go after the promotion and they're too afraid to go get another job that's actually going to pay them a livable wage or more than a livable wage, is because they're afraid it's going to mean more work. And what I will tell you is that that is not always the case. In fact, it really depends on where you're at currently, what your current role is, what the company culture is, and what you're trying to transition into. Now, I know that this is not the case for every position. Maybe in your case, you're like, no, I have really looked into it. I have talked to people who are in the position above what I want to be in at multiple different companies. And I know no matter where I go, if this is the job that I want to go for and I want to get paid more money, and this is the only option for me to get paid more money, that's going to mean a lot more work and it's going to be a lot more stress and it's just not worth it. Like, it's not worth my peace. It's not worth my happiness. Notice I had a lot of disclaimers there because it's like, unless you have done all of those things that I just said, that you have talked to people who are in the position that you want to be in at multiple different companies with multiple different backgrounds, multiple different industries, and you know for sure that the only way for you to make more money is that position at any company, anywhere else, and that is for sure going to equal more stress and more responsibilities and things like that. That's the only way that you really know. And even then, it's a question mark of like, yes, this is actually going to be a hindrance to my lifestyle. We don't actually know that until we try these things. And so that's why I'm such a big proponent and a pusher of, if you have a desire to make more money, if you have a desire to improve your standard of living, and you are not asking for more money, and you are not going after those promotions, and you are not job hopping every couple of years, what are you doing? The number one reason that I hear women not doing it is because they're afraid it's going to equal more work. And that is not always true. In many of the women that I have coached, as well as many of the women that I've just interacted with, going up the corporate ladder often meant less stress because they were getting paid more money so that they could afford the things that they needed in their life, like a housekeeper, like, childcare, like whatever the things that they needed. But also they were able to then delegate a lot of the work. It's like the higher you get up on the food chain, the less actual hands-on work you're doing. And the more you're overseeing, the more you are evaluating, the more you're supervising. And so the hands-on work in the trenches is not necessarily going to equal what you're now having to do. Like, you're not going to have to do double the work in order to get paid double what you're getting paid right now. So I think that's one of the false beliefs we have to kind of start unwinding in our brains of like, oh, if I get a promotion, that means more work and I'm going to be more stressed and I'm not going to have the life that I want, because you're never going to know until you find out. In some instances, yeah, that's a possibility, but you can always take a step back. You can always find a job that is less responsibility, that is not going to stress you out. But there's only so many opportunities for advancement in life. So for me, what I tell everyone is, why not just give it a shot? Unless you have concrete evidence that it is going to be more work, it's going to be, stressful, or maybe it's just not the right company for you to take that job on, then why not at least try? You can always take a step back. So that's kind of the little mini episode that I wanted to put out there, the mini tip that I wanted to give, because I hate seeing people not shoot their shot and not allow themselves to at least have the experience, to try it out, to see if maybe it does improve your life. Maybe it does equate to more happiness. Maybe it does equate to more flexibility. In my own personal experience, and I recognize that my personal experience is not going to be everybody's personal experience. I used to work in a nonprofit company where I basically had three people's jobs. I was working a crap ton. I didn't have a lot of help and I was stressed pretty much all the time. And I really wasn't getting paid very well for all that I was doing for the company. And I was afraid to leave that job because I actually thought in that position that I was getting overpaid because I didn't know what my value was. I thought I was doing better than most people in nonprofit, which I probably was because nonprofit is historically low and I worked at an association. But I was afraid that I was not going to be able to have a job that I enjoyed and get paid more money because I thought that that was I thought I had found the interesting job where I was getting paid decent and I enjoyed the work, I guess, a little bit. Not really. I didn't really enjoy the work, but it wasn't horrible. And so it took me getting so fed up with the politics of the company that I worked with to finally start applying to other jobs and to allow myself to essentially get rid of this idea that another job was going to equate to more work and that another job was going to be boring and I wasn't going to be fulfilled. And so I started interviewing at a bunch of different places. And I remember the job that I ended up taking was something that on paper was not interesting to me. It was not something that I was excited about. It looked boring. It looked like a step down in my responsibilities. I had people who were working for me. I was managing multiple projects. I was bringing in money. I felt like I was a leader at my nonprofit company and I was on the fast track to becoming a director. And that excited me from the success standpoint. And then when I looked at this job that I was transitioning into, I was like, this feels like a step down. Nobody would be working under me. I'd be like low man on the totem pole instead of being, responsible for projects and things. I'd only be responsible for this small component of a project, the communications aspect of it. I'm like, I don't know, this seems kind of boring. And so one of my mentors was working at the company that I was interviewing for at the time. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to be right for me. I feel like I'm going to be bored. And she was like, it's not as exciting as the work that you're doing at the nonprofit, but you're going to get paid $30,000 more at least. And that's going to allow you to do other stuff in your life. And working with engineers and working in this industry, even though, yeah, it's not the most interesting thing, there are interesting components of it. And you're going to meet so many people. You leaving and finding another job is never going to be an issue because you're going to have exposure to so many different people. And it's essentially just another skill set that you're building. I was like, all right, well, let me at least interview and talk to them and make it clear what I need in order to accept this job. And so when the offer came around and they gave me my offer, I think the original offer was $80,000 a year. They were like, we'll pay you 80 grand to come be our communications manager. We'll give you a car and you can, use that car to commute to and from work. And they told me the benefits package. And I was like, I actually laughed, which is so embarrassing to say now because I don't know why. I think it was a nervous laughter. I laughed. I think I was laughing at the car because I was like, I don't need a car. So this isn't appealing to me. I appreciate the offer. And I said, thank you so much. I appreciate it. But, I was really hoping for 95,000. What can we do to get closer to that number? And I was like, I'm willing to forego that car. If I don't take the car on, what else can you guys give me? And they called back an hour later and offered me 93,000. And that was more money than I ever thought I would ever make. I was just like, holy shit, I can't say no to that. And so I said, let me think about it. Cause I was also interviewing and was in the third round of a really cool job at UNICEF, which is another nonprofit that does on the ground fundraising. And I would have been doing individual and corporate giving there, which excited me. It was more interesting, but I knew I wasn't going to get paid as much. And I asked them to give me a week to think about it. And I never ended up hearing from UNICEF. They just kept stringing me along. And finally, I was like, I have to give this other company an answer. And if you guys can't give me an idea of where I'm at in this interview, I'm going to have to accept it. And they could not give me an answer. And so I went and I accepted it. And I thought going from nonprofit to corporate America was going to be a huge amount of work and increase in what I had to do on a day-to-day basis. And oh my gosh, I went from working every hour of the day to barely working. It felt like such a huge decrease. I felt like my workload got cut into a third. And now, granted, I think it's because I'm a really efficient person and I was able to get things done quickly. But I remember thinking I was going to get fired for the first year and a half because the workload on my plate just was nothing in comparison to what I had at the nonprofit. And granted, it's like anything they gave me, I got it done a lot faster than they probably expected me to get into it. And I was quick at picking things up. But it was such a relief. I was getting paid $30,000 more than what I was used to getting paid at the nonprofit for a third of the work, if not less than that. And I was doing a good job. I was picking things up. Yes. Was the work boring? Absolutely. Did I enjoy the job? No. But getting paid that well and having my stress cut down to like almost nothing was incredible. It opened my life up, and my ability to do everything else that I wanted outside of work, that was transformative for me. So that's kind of why I am such a big pusher of like, go and find out. Don't convince yourself not to go for something. Like, let somebody else be the person who tells you no. Let somebody else like come in and decide that this isn't the right fit for you, or that didn't make sense. Don't be the person who talks yourself out of new opportunities. Instead, go try it. And then if you try it and you don't like it, then go look for something else. There's nothing wrong with trying it. Now, I get that this is coming from the perspective of somebody who doesn't have to support anyone else. And I do have that flexibility. So I understand if you have kids or if you have job stability and security and things like that, it may be a little bit different for you. But I still encourage, especially women, to just give it a try, to ask for more, to put your hat in the ring for that promotion, to give yourself the opportunity. Because sure, if you get into it and you realize it's not a right fit for you, that's a solvable problem, but you're never going to know until you try it out. So I don't know. Well, I know some people feel very strongly that's not the way to go and that you should be happy with what you have and you should be grateful. And I'm like, yeah, you can be happy with what you have and you can be grateful. And you can also ask for more. You can also go after more. You can also want more. That's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like this Puritan culture of you shouldn't want more. You shouldn't ask for more. It's like you could do both. You could be grateful and want more. So stay hungry, right? It's all about finding that balance and what works for you. But I hate seeing women talk themselves out of a pay raise because they think they're happy where they're at. Or it's like, well, could you be happier? That's what I ask. Could you be happier? Could your life be a little bit easier? And often the answer is yes. So sending you love. If you guys don't already have it and you're like, well, how do you do that? How do you ask for more money? How do you get promoted? How do you go after those? I have a full like hour-long video on how I was able to increase my income from 42,000 to 130,000 in like 4 or 5 years in corporate America. And that's like not including any of my side hustle income. It's on YouTube, but there's a link to it inside of that Money Right guide. So if you have the free guide, or if you don't have it, go to moneyrightguide.com. And there's a link to that video in there to talk about how I increased my income so quickly. I want more women to get more money because then you can be investing more money and then you've got more options and then we can all retire rich batty grandmas on the beach somewhere, sipping those kombuchas and talking about how awesome we are. So, all right. Well, that's all I've got for you guys for today. Go get your bag. Go make more money. Do not be the one who talks yourself out of advancing yourself because you can always go back. So, all right. Love you all. And I will talk to you all next week. Bye-bye. Hopefully I feel better by then.
Thank you so much for listening to the Money Bear podcast. If you've made it this far, do us a favor, take 2 seconds, rate, review, and subscribe. It seriously means the world to me. And if you just take a sec to do that, I will appreciate you endlessly. And if you do, let me know on Instagram and I'll thank you personally. So, got that. And of course, since we were talking about anything financial on this show, please note that nothing on this show is intended as financial advice. I don't know you, unfortunately. And because of that, I cannot tell you what to do with your money. You got to work with a financial professional who knows your situation, who is preferably a fiduciary. And keep in mind that everything that we talk about on this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It's all my opinion. So, There's that. If you want to see our full terms and conditions, head on over to the show notes. And while you're there, we've got free resources for you to get started on your money journey down in the show notes as well, including a free guide to help you with your budgeting templates and budgeting tutorials and investing 101, understanding the different accounts that are out there. All that good stuff is inside of my free guide, which is also available at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/guide. And if you're ready to take our relationship to the next level, I am also hosting a monthly investing class. And that investing class, you can find the times we're offering it this month at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/webinar. That link is in the show notes as well. And that's where you have the chance to meet me live and ask those money questions live. It's a good time. We've had over 20,000 people as of recording this join or register. And yeah, it's always nice to meet you guys. So I hope to see you there. Again, all that is available down in the show notes. So thank you again for coming and listening. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.